Welcome to the Mikrolive Christmas show. In this month's programme, we have an exclusive interview with the man who hacked Prince Philip's Prestel electronic mailbox. We'll be attempting to create the world's tackiest electronic Christmas card and suggesting presents for the computer buff who has everything.
And I'll be talking to Chris Palmer, if I can stop him playing and make him talk to me, about the past, present and future of computer games. We'll also be unveiling the first ever computer game for over 1 million players, and everyone watching can join in.
Thank you, Bill. And Bill Bruford from King Crimson is here to demonstrate his spectacular electronic computer. Well done. And from America, Fref has good news for cartoon fans.
In that picturesque pink building behind me, some very interesting pictures are being made.
On this lost world of humankind, the oldest myth is true.
Beautiful. Jack Tramiel, the new boss of ailing Atari company, announced in London on Wednesday that he's slashing the price of the 800XL by a quarter to £130 with immediate effect. Jack founded Commodore but left suddenly in January this year. He has now declared war on his old company, saying that he has until the 31st of December to turn Atari round. When we asked him why he'd left Commodore, he said, "If you don't go into your work smiling, you don't go in at all." Well, he's smiling now, so perhaps Commodore had better watch out.
Well, Monday sees the last rites for the game software company Imagine, as the Liverpool auctioneers Turner & Sons sell off the company's remaining hardware in 249 lots. Now, the actual name of Imagine has been taken over by Ocean Software, whose Daley Thompson's Decathlon is still #1 in Gallup's software top 50. The whole story is told on the BBC documentary Commercial Breaks, which goes out at 8 o'clock on BBC Two on Thursday. It really is compulsive viewing.
Now, some correspondence. Ed Edwards was a bit sceptical about the floppy disk that we tried to destroy in last month's programme. He could see how dipping a disk in beer wouldn't affect its performance, but he says, how can anything survive all that Barry Manilow?
He has got a point. Mr. Machin went to stunning lengths to do in his own floppy disks. He told us, "I was charged with 40,000 volts on a Van de Graaff generator while I had a disk in my pocket, and the disk still worked." I wonder if Mr. Machin still worked there.
Maybe not. Well, John Smith complains that we're doing too much about telephones and telecommunications. But you can't please everybody all the time. And David Craig says, could you please have a bit more on, guess what, telecommunications?
We'll keep trying. We've had over 2,000 people dial into the Mikrolive bulletin board, but we've discovered a slight problem as our storage disks are overflowing. Now, so much so that we've had to start pushing callers off to let other callers on. I'm sorry if that's happened to you. We are hoping to improve the system shortly, aren't you?
Well, our integrated software project has attracted 650 enquiries, from deep-sea divers who want to keep track of their oxygen to vicars who want to help writing their sermons. I keep hearing that story over and over again. I wonder if there really is a vicar. To architects who want a computer to help them rebuild Glasgow. Well, we'll be choosing 3 people to put their applications on the integrated software next week.
And now, serious for a moment, a word of warning. An advert for a company calling itself Spectra Imports UK has been appearing in some computer magazines. Ian MacLeod of Paddington spotted this one in Your Spectrum and phoned us because he was very suspicious of the extremely cheap prices. They offer a Spectrum 48K for £59.95 and a BBC Model B for just £315. It seems too good to be true, and indeed it is. The company is bogus and is currently under investigation by the Lancashire Police. They have managed to recover about 500 letters with money, and these will be returned when their investigations are completed. Meanwhile, listen, if you spot an advert that offers computer products very cheaply, beware. Don't part with your money unless you're absolutely certain it's genuine. Last week, the papers were full of news of hackers getting, among other things, into Prince Philip's Prestel mailbox. Time Fame, one of Prestel's most popular information providers, claimed that a mole had been leaking information to the hackers from inside Prestel itself, and this led to denials from BT and the robust removal of Time Fame's contract. Now, hacking may or may not be a criminal offence. It's never actually been tested in the courts, but Prestel this week described hackers as electronic shoplifters. It's almost certainly illegal if it leads to damage to other people. But hackers can reveal loopholes in systems which less scrupulous people could use for malicious or, of course, fraudulent ends. Mikrolive has tracked down one of the hackers, and since he wants to keep on using his phone, he naturally wants to remain anonymous. So I think we'll just call him Mike.
Mike, what are we looking at now?
We're looking at Vampire, which is what BT used to monitor the Prestel computers. This is Kipling computer, and each block on the screen is one line into the computer, and depending on the line, or depending on the block's colour, we can tell if that line's in use, and if so, what it's being used for, either a user into Prestel or an update coming through from one of the information providers.
Now, that wouldn't be accessible to any information provider, nor anybody actually using Prestel.
No, only to Prestel staff.
Now, let's get one thing absolutely clear right from the beginning.
Right.
Is there a mole in British Telecoms?
There is no mole in British Telecom. Timeframe, one of the IPs on Prestel, one of the people who publish information, had a story last week saying that they thought there might be a mole within Prestel. The hack that they claimed took place didn't actually take place. I know that for a fact. There's nobody in Prestel that I know of passing information.
So you've received no information from any single individual in Prestel?
None at all, no.
So is this true that you actually hacked the Duke of Edinburgh's account?
Yes, it is.
And what did you find there?
Not a lot. I could have read his mail, which was mail that he'd been sent from Prestel users. And I could also have sent mail, which would have come from the Duke of Edinburgh. So people who read the mail would have thought they'd had a message from the Duke of Edinburgh, when in fact it came from me.
How did you do it?
It started about a year ago. I was sitting next to a Prestel terminal. It was asking me for an ID. The nearest key to my finger was 2, so I pressed 22222222222. And to my surprise, it said, correct, please enter your password. It had taken all those 2s as an ID, so I tried 1234 as a password, and presto, it worked. I was logged on as Mr. G. Reynolds, who was a member of Prestel. He worked for Prestel, and was therefore a member of the closed user group, which is a part of Prestel that only BT employees can see. Within that BT database was the phone numbers of all Prestel's development computers, which I then had access to. So I used to dial them up every week and see what was happening. There wasn't much going on, but I dialed them up every week just to see. Then, at the beginning of last month, I dialed one of them again. It was a 236 number in London, which has now been changed. I was amazed that on the front page of that computer, where it says, please enter your ID, someone had written the ID number and password of the system manager of Prestel. And armed with that ID, I could discover the identity number and password of any user of Prestel, including the Duke of Edinburgh.
Well, Prestel have told their users to change all their passwords. Can you
Yes.
still get in?
Yes, I can. There's one problem in that if you want to change your password, you have to dial all the computers on which you're registered. And some people haven't done that because it's difficult to get through to a specific computer. You usually have to dial a special phone number and you've got a 50-50 chance of getting through to certain computers. Also, the information providers who put the information on Prestel have 3 sets of passwords, of which Prestel have now changed 2 after this hack. However, there's still a way of getting into Prestel that I can do using just that 3rd password that BT haven't changed.
So you could actually get on to Prestel and rack up a bill for somebody else, some other third party, which they'd have to pay.
Yes, and still change people's information.
Change people's information from the information providers.
Yes.
What can you actually still do apart from that?
I can get into nearly every database on Prestel and change the information and run up a bill and see BT internal information that I'm not supposed to see.
So what's your advice to users?
My advice to users is write to Prestel today and ask for your identity number to be changed, not just your password.
And what about the advice to Prestel?
Advice to Prestel is change your passwords.
Do you think of yourself as an electronic thief, as they try to imply in that press cutting?
No, I use Prestel myself in business for sending information to my friends, and I've got my life savings in my HomeLink account, which is a home banking system on Prestel. I want that system to be as safe as possible because I've got my money amongst other people's, and I'm making sure that Prestel is safe. At the moment, it isn't. I'd like to see it as safe as possible.
Thank you very much. So the advice there to the user is change your passwords regularly, and to Prestel, it's change your passwords regularly, and perhaps get a grip.
Well, Chris, this is certainly a cut above the average arcade game, isn't it? Pictures are stunning.
Yeah. Well, this is state-of-the-art as to what's in the arcade at the moment. It's a game called Super Don Quixote, and as you can see from the quality of the graphics, it's a Laserdisc game. And there's 1,280K worth of memory in there, so you're not actually going to see that on your home micro just yet.
Mind you, things have progressed tremendously in the home micro games field since they first began, haven't they?
Yes, because it only began in 1974 with a guy called Nolan Bushnell who invented the first Pong game. And of course they started coming into our homes in the form of these wonderful things, which I suppose is a techno-antique now, really.
What, 10 years ago, it looks so dated.
I know, it's wonderful. And as you can see, I mean, the graphics leave a little bit to be desired.
Yeah, very simple.
Still a good game, though.
Yeah. I think we were easily pleased in those days.
Yes. But of course, games came really into their own with the arrival of the home computers. And what I'd like to show you now is some of the more exciting directions which games are taking. So we're starting off on this one with a game called Mud.
A multi-user dungeon, but I don't know what you do with it.
Yeah. Well, basically, it's the same as an adventure game, but as opposed to the game being resident in the computer, it's running on a mainframe, which is miles away. And so you tie into it via a modem down the phone line, and it's a huge adventure. So you play it in the same way, you explore and pick up treasure and things like that.
And multi-user, that implies lots of people can use it at the same time?
Oh, there can be hundreds of people on the system, and you can actually run into them as you're wandering around the playing area,
Right,
and you can chat to them.
And you access that through a Commodore, a modem, and then on the CompuNet system, is it?
Well, yes, on the CompuNet, but you can also get directly in via Essex computer or using a different sort of host computer.
Righty-ho. Well, shall we pop in and see what's going on?
Oh, yes. Whoa, what's going on here? We got, Mac the Wizard has popped in to say hello, and he says, how are you? So...
Are you going to reply to that?
I don't know,
Guess, go on.
I'll say hello back, why not? And so that'll now go down the line and come back.
Oh,
so it said
But
hello.
the lovely thing about something like this is it's totally unpredictable. You really don't know what on earth you're going to get back, do you?
Well, no,
all
I
the
mean,
time?
it's a huge playing area, much bigger than you'd get in there.
Very, very good way of extending or getting around the limitations of memory in
Yes,
home
it's
computers.
very good. But of course, there are other ways you can do it, which is shown by this game, which is called Quo Vadis, from a company called The Edge. And what they've done is they've written a game that's got 1,000 screens in it. So if you imagine that that's a 14-inch screen, if you were to put them all together and lay them out, you'd have an area of something like 46 feet by 30 feet. And so you can...
That would take a tremendous amount of memory, which this computer hasn't got.
No, you see, that's the clever bit. You see, they've developed a coding system which allows them to shrink that data down into a manageable size.
Yeah.
Now, we've got a bit of cardboard at the back with a diagram, which is going to make this a lot easier to explain.
I'm glad about that.
Yes.
It's quite complicated, isn't it?
All right. So the screen is made up of 6 graphics blocks that all fit together in a variety of combinations, and there are over 100 in the program itself, and you can combine them in different ways to make up the different screens. So when you move onto the screen, the computer takes out 6 bytes of memory, and each of those bytes represents one of these graphic blocks. It then decodes them, so it says, OK, that one there means there's platforms in that bit of the screen, that one means there's a tower, and so on. So it just builds the picture up as you move into the scene.
It takes its choice out of this, which represents the entire playing area. That's it, and that's a screen's worth.
Yeah, just 6 bytes.
Just 6 bytes.
Yeah.
So it's not using anything like its memory capacity. That's excellent. Now, I think we ought to really talk about the object of this game then as well.
Well, basically, the little chap can wander around inside and explore and find things. But there is a catch to this game. Hidden inside somewhere in one of those 1,000 locations is a scepter. And if you find that and answer a couple of questions, there's 30 grand, providing they've sold enough copies of the game.
Hold it! I found the scepter.
Wrong scepter. That's the part of the prize. You get that if you find the scepter in the programme.
I thought I'd cracked it.
Good
Never
try,
mind,
though.
it was a nice try. Nice prize, too.
Not bad going.
Real one for a mythical
Yes.
game.
But anyway, both of those are actually on sale this Christmas, so you can buy those if you want. But we're going to have a look at something now, which isn't in the British shots for Christmas. What we've got here is a video disc player interfaced to an MSX computer. And in this game, the computer is controlling the images you see on the screen. Plus, it's also overlaying images of its own on the top. So this provides the sort of the guiding intelligence for the pictures you see here.
Right. But the pictures are actually real, aren't they? I mean, they look terribly real.
Live footage.
It's
almost too real. Yes, it's live footage.
Yeah.
So what you do is, as you move the joystick to the left, or to the right, you can see your perspective changes.
So you're actually jumping lanes, aren't you?
Trying to avoid the cars and the barrels, and if you don't.
And the horrendous slashes. Right, so this is combining what? 2 mediums, really, isn't it? It's combining the video and then the keyboard and the computer.
That's right, it's getting over the problem. I mean, memory is used up a lot by graphics.
Yeah.
So by having video disc images, you get over that problem.
So you cut out that use of memory altogether,
Yeah.
really, don't you? So you've got your lovely images. Well, I don't know about lovely, it's horrendously
Yes.
real. I feel like I'm actually driving the car.
Yes, I mean, I suppose it's half of the way there, but the illusion is really incomplete because you can only see it. But if you'd like to take a seat, I shall attempt to complete the illusion for you.
I sit down in here, Chris?
Yes, in that little
his
chair
old
there.
chair?
No, it's not an old chair. That must be the ultimate game peripheral. What you've got either side of your head
Yes.
are 2 speakers, and in the back of the chair and in the seat of the chair are subsonic drivers.
Yes.
And so we've now wired that into this game. So I'm going to take you for a
Suddenly
little
I don't
while.
trust you,
That's
Chris.
all right. Turn up the volume, just sit back and enjoy
I've been
it a
waiting
bit.
for this all day,
Yes.
incidentally.
Well,
Right, well, I'll
you're
turn
in
up.
for the ride of
Here
your
we
life.
go.
Okay? So you can feel that a bit better.
Oh, I've had
right,
enough.
right at time.
Oh, it's just as well the game's over. I
Well-
was very lucky there with the sound effects I was getting that you didn't manage to crash me,
Yes, with my driving record so far.
because that would have been pretty
Yeah.
unpleasant.
So you still on that lift home?
No, I think I'll go by train.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Whew. Now, if you don't fancy this overwhelming amount of hardware possibly cluttering up your living room, there's some research going on in the States which could make the whole lot obsolete. Telekinesis is the long-disputed theory of controlling things by the mind. Well, now I know it's not the time or the place for a genuine scientific experiment, but we couldn't resist recruiting you, the audience, to give it some thought, so to speak. I've got a little program on this computer which has been designed by our tame techie Steve in the office, and the program drives this spaceship upwards towards these gates. As it travels upwards, it can go left, right, completely at random, unless, that is, our combined wills could possibly direct it otherwise. What do you think? Well, if you'll all concentrate at home, if everybody will concentrate in the studio, including you, Mac, I want to recruit you for this exercise. OK, we'll have the lights down for atmosphere. That's it. And a little drum roll from Bill, please. And we will now think it through. Think to the left, think to the left, think to the left, think to the left, 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 failed!
Well, I've seen some rubbish in my life, Leslie, but that does take some believing. Well, we thought it might be fun to make a Mikrolive Christmas card, so we've got together a selection of graphics packages. Normally, these packages won't work together at all, and in fact, we've had to write rather special software to let the output of one package be fed as input into another package. And we're taking as our first input this digitising camera here, pointing at this incredibly moth-eaten, sub-micro miniaturised Christmas tree. The output from this camera goes straight into the micro here. We're going to use a graphics package, but something similar to this is available on most micros. And to control it, we're using a well-known mouse, and as you know, the ball here, as it moves across the table, moves the cursor around on the screen here. And we can control, there's 3 function keys here, one for action, one to cancel, and so on. And so I'm going to start and improve this picture. This is actually the picture we're getting of this dreadful little Christmas tree, and I'm going to try and smarten it up. I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm selecting up here in this top right-hand corner, there is some icons which show a pencil and a paint sprayer and a roller, and that's an eraser and so on. And down lower down here, there's the size of the spray and the thickness of the lines and so on, and that's the colour that I'm actually transmitting at the moment. So I'm going to use the paint spray, select a fairly reasonable thickness line, and then paint in some roots of the tree around here, something like this. Not so bad. And then perhaps with a thinner line, I'll separate that off across there, and then break the tree up a little bit into various areas that I'll colour in later or make rather nice. And perhaps over here we'll put in a path coming down through the snow. Oh, it's rather nice so far. And then I'm going to change. I've been doing it in black, so I'm going to select over here. And on the bottom, we can see quite a lot of different colours we can do. So I've selected white now, and I'm going to select a thicker line and draw myself a house. And we'll take that across there like that. That's the roof. Amazing this is. Have a window. And then with a thinner line, select a thinner line. It's very rapid. Draw the wall. And then I'll put in a door here to make it look reasonably good. There's the door. Perhaps a few stars would look quite nice in this dark sky. And then we can select a circle here and place that in the middle. And of course we can have it any diameter we like, so we'll make a nice big fat moon and fix that in position. And it's beginning to look quite smart, I think. We might like to put some text in. So I'll select the text here. We'll do it in very bold. And select the text here. And I'll place it at that point there. And this is the first time I use the keyboard. I'll put in micro and underneath live. Oh, didn't like that. live. And that's it. Well, of course, it doesn't look particularly good. So what we thought we might do is use the roller up here and put in some different shadings. Well, obviously that's meant to be snow, so we'll call that snow, snow, snow. The path, perhaps the roots of the tree, that one. There's the roots of the tree, some nice colours around the tree. Well, not really colours, but patterns. That's jollied it up a little bit. Clearly we need a roof on the house. A shingle roof would go well. Windows are windows, so we'll put some windows in there. What's left? The path. Put the path in. And there we are. We have some sort of Christmas card. Well, anybody who actually has a colour set would readily recognise that the one thing that lacks is some colour. Now what I could do is plug in another device into this and use some more software, but instead of doing that, it takes rather a long time to convert it. I've taken a picture that I drew earlier on this evening here, and I'm going to use this device, a new input device, which is a graphics tablet, and this time instead of being controlled by a mouse, it's controlled by a pen, and there's a little switch here which switches it on and off, and on this tablet it positions the cursor, and as I move it around, the cursor will appear on the screen. I'm using some more software here to place the colours. I'm selected a brush, a yellow brush, and I'm going to fill. And I move the cursor, and there's the cursor. First of all, I'm going to fill the door there, and place on there, and with a bit of luck, there we got a yellow door, and perhaps to cheer it up, we'll put in a yellow moon as well. Oops, missed the yellow moon. Ah, didn't work, the yellow moon. So perhaps I'll have another go at that. Fill. And yellow moon coming up. Ah, made it. Brilliant. So this time I'm going to select another colour, red, and I'm going to draw some lines. And this, perhaps thick lines will do, because we need a bit of cheer on this amazing Christmas tree that I've drawn. And so I can quickly start and put patterns all over the Christmas tree. Isn't this amazing? This is pure art. You're seeing creativity actually happening, and wonderful. I didn't really know I had it in me. And having done that, of course, the next thing we want to do is to save that. So I save it by typing that. Now we're going to enter a file name. I'm going to call it dump, which is the place this is likely to end up. Now it's saving it on disk, and the last thing we want to do, of course, we can't send it electronically. I guess we could have sent it electronically, but we're not connected up. So what I want to do is to print it out. And we've got a little program here which takes another piece of software, and it will start as soon as it's drawn on the screen to print it out on this line printer. And while that's happening, we'll go over to the United States and see Fref.
Animation is one of the great art forms of the 20th century. But if you've been watching cartoons for the last few years, you've seen the quality going downhill. That's because good animation costs a lot in both time and materials. Well, be of good cheer. Here on Long Island, at the New York Institute of Technology, things are happening which are changing all of that. The Computer Graphics Laboratory here brings together artists, engineers, and computer programmers. For nearly 10 years, they've been developing computer systems for manipulating images. One of their latest projects is a film called Dragonflight.
Enter a world where the strange meets the familiar, where heroism comes in unlikely guises.
For smooth animation, every second of film requires 24 separate pictures. In the past, each picture had to be drawn and colored by hand, one reason why traditional animation is so expensive. The action of each character or object is advanced slightly in successive frames, giving the illusion of continuous movement. For Dragonflight, only about 1 in every 4 pictures is drawn by hand. These keyframes are digitized and fed into one of the laboratory's DEC mini-computers using a video camera. Drawing the rest of the pictures is called in-betweening. Mary Mazzarella, an ex-Disney artist, explains how the computer system works.
So the TV screen becomes the logo. That's nice.
Now, the way we do that is that we start with the 2 paper drawings, one of the TV and the other of the BBC logo, and each drawing has the same exact amount of lines. Line number 1 from the TV outline will transform into the C of the BBC logo right here.
The entire exterior is the same line.
The same line. The 2 exterior lines of the Bs will transform from the 2nd and 3rd line hidden on the TV screen.
But there was only one line there that I saw.
Well, I made a fake line, one on top of the other, to trick the machine into doing that interpolation for me.
I see.
So you have to give it enough information. The knobs are also doubled, so you can see them split apart, see? And they're going to the interior lines of the two Bs. So actually what you're doing is telling each line where to go and how to get there in order to make that interpolation very smooth and very clear for you.
Now, in this case, you only did 2 drawings yourself, right?
That's all. The first keyframe right here and the last keyframe right here. And the rest of them are all computer generated.
How much time does this kind of technique, this computer technique, save you?
Well, in numbers, if we worked in a conventional studio like I did years ago, if we had a staff of 50 or 60 people, now you could do the same amount of work with 5 or 10.
And the in-betweening system isn't limited to simple images. This piece, called Saw Loser, has over 100 lines and about 5 computer-generated pictures for each one drawn by hand. Once the line drawings are fully animated, the next step is to add color. Annette Zachariah, another artist, demonstrates.
Now when I begin, I call an unpainted cell into my frame buffer. Then I call up my palette, which you'll notice consists of only 15 colors. I choose my colors, and I start filling in directly. Now, if I wanted to see a smaller area, such as the mouth of the dragon, I can magnify by either 2, 4, or 8 times the original size of the drawing. And I can also change colors if I wanted to. I'll show you what a painted cell looks like, such as this one.
To do this kind of thing conventionally is both laborious and time-consuming. An even more sophisticated painting system is used for the final stage of the process, drawing the backgrounds against which the dragons can save the world.
The basics of it all is the tablet's filled with wires, horizontal and vertical, and the pen has an antenna on it and a micro switch. So when you get the antenna close to these wires, it gives you the cursor on the screen, so that shows you where you're at. And the menu, when you get the cursor over a word, you simply press down on the micro switch, and that tells the computer what you want to do. Here's a piece out of Dragonflight. And we needed some large pictures for these dragons to fly with effects coming over and rain and lightning. And if somebody says, well, this is a daytime scene and they wanted a stormy sky or something like that, I don't have to repaint that either. I can make the sky lighter or darker. I can put more color in it, less color in it for grays, or I can run through the spectrum.
Whoa, that's very impressive. Well, of course,
So
it's
we get
fantasy
nice
pictures. You can have a purple or a green sky.
Right.
Do you find it feels the same as a pen or a paintbrush?
No, it feels altogether different, but it's very easy to get used to because the tablet and the program is coordinated from screen to here so close that pretty soon you forget what your hand's doing. You simply watch the screen. I think the best way to show that is I'll paint you something right from scratch, because there's a lot of things you can do. And basically the way you work with any art is you flat out some kind of color scheme, get your color schemes working first, and then you go back in and do finish rendering. I'm going to end up with 255 color schemes in a matter of a few minutes, and conventionally you wouldn't even have the first puddle of paint mixed up yet. So I can pick colors off the screen and fill areas to get a color scheme going, or I can pick them from the palette. And also it'll flash through them, but I can stop at any place I want. So what it's doing now is rotating through the color map, so it's giving me 255 more color schemes.
It's blinding, in fact.
There's an awful lot of effects you can get out of a computer, very reasonable. I've got all kinds of brushes I can use. For instance, this next brush is a group of dots. And so now you can do a different kind of rendering. You do stipple rendering if you like.
Add texture to the picture.
Yes. So you can render this way with all 256 colors. So you can render like so. Or you can slow down just slightly and you'll get continuous lines from each dot, or speed up and feather out. So by varying your speed a little bit, with different brushes you get different effects. And what I'm going to do is just make a simple little design here. And if I had to do a couple of thousand daisies, I wouldn't have to worry about it because I simply make a brush out of it. At that point, you got all the daisies you need, or you can have a whole field full. And also something kind of fun to watch is now the computer is doing some...
Well, it's shifting through the colors for you.
Yes, it's cycling right through the brush as I use it. So as you see, it changes by slowing down or speeding up. You can distort out, stretch art, do all kinds of different things to it. But what I'm going to do now is just take a hunk of the screen and reflect it over. But also you can take some of the software and programs that are written for one thing and experiment and come out with unusual things like building textures and things like this.
That's sort of blurring the art out, isn't it? It's making colors blend into one another at their edges.
If you notice this kind of an effect, I would hate to have to pay for something like this on film because it would take you forever.
What a magnificent tool. How about one of those for Christmas? Well, of course, the computer doesn't make an artist out of an unskilled person. It's just a tool that speeds up the boring bits. Well, it certainly wouldn't help me. Here's the finished version of the Mikrolive Christmas card. We also added Merry Christmas, and it was drawn by our old friend, the Penman plotter. We've also done an all-singing, all-dancing version of it, which is available on our bulletin board, and you can see it on CFAX on page 710. Well, I've also been passed a note saying that the managing director of Time Fame has rung up to say that they only said there was a possibility of a mole in Prestel, not that there actually was a mole in Prestel. Well, I've now been joined by Matt Nicholson, the editor of What Micro. Welcome, Matt, who's been looking at this month's news. And we're starting off with one per desk from ICL. It's rather an interesting combination of a telephone and a microcomputer. It's really a first on the market.
Yes, it's a very original concept and something that I think we'll see a lot more of.
Could you show us some of the things it does?
Yes, indeed. I mean, one thing which instantly tells you it's not an ordinary computer is this.
I am away on business. Please call this evening.
It's got a nice synthetic voice chip in there,
Yes,
and you can actually type in words up to 800, even from a distance if you can connect into it, and then leave that as a message for somebody. It sounds a bit metallic and dreadful. Of course, it's also got a telephone directory in it, so you can look at it and refer to all your telephone numbers. So it's very nice from a point of view as a telephone.
Very
How about
much,
as a computer?
As a computer, I mean, in addition to that, it also has the sort of communications with other micros, this sort of thing. But it's based on the QL technology developed by Sinclair and has the Exchange package built in, which is a very powerful integrated package giving you spreadsheets, databases. And I can show that, and another feature of this machine, which is earlier on I was doing some typing on here. I can get straight back to that by simply pressing one button. And we're straight back to the word processor of the document I was typing in there.
That's very nice. The other thing I quite liked about it, if you get really lost in it, because it is a multi-processing system, you can hit start and go straight back to your top-level thing. Well, how do you sum it up?
Very nice concept, beautiful idea in having the phone with the computer and some of the implications I've done there. But I'm very worried about these, which is the microdrive that we've seen on the QL. They're just not reliable enough for a business, I don't think.
Because eventually they will produce them with a 3.5-inch disc or something different.
I hope
but
so.
this only costs £1,200, and I guess, you know, for that price, it's a fairly interesting
Not bad,
concept.
yes.
What else have you been looking at?
Going further in the user-friendly type of software, we have here GEM from Digital Research, running on an Apricot F1.
It looks very much like Macintosh to me.
It is very much, and I think this is a trend that we're going to see more of, the icons here and so forth. I can show, for example, go up to, you have the drop-down menus, which we saw on the earlier package. I can, from here, go into a calculator, zooms in, and any moment there should be a pocket calculator there.
That's very nice. Of course, I might say that the one per desk also has a pocket calculator.
Yes.
And which seems to be quite commonplace. Very nice little concept, and of course it will work on lots of micros, not just this one.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Lovely, weird and wacky sounds from Bill Bruford of King Crimson. Hello. First of all, can you explain to me this pad, the one you didn't hit?
Yes, I can. This avoids a lot of knob twiddling over on the main unit, which you're leaning on.
Sorry about that, I'll get back. Tell me.
And allows me my choice of 16 drum sets, which we've taken from the main unit, which stores 99.
Right, and that's 16 choices per pad, I gather.
Yes, it is, and I can recall them just by pressing like so.
Right. I notice you've got the kit set up around you, like an acoustic kit would
Yes,
be set up. Does
yes.
that mean that you call these pads by their equivalent drum names?
Yes,
And the one on the floor is the bass drum?
Indeed, it's a place to start. I mean, any pad can be anything, so it helps if we start by calling this the snare drum, the bass drum, and so forth.
Okay. Can we listen to one or two of the sort of sounds that you've selected on different ones, say starting with the tom-tom?
Well, certainly, this drum up here sounds like this on program 1, but then, of course, it might sound if we take 14, which is more or less at random.
Completely different.
Indeed, and anything
Almost
in
like
between.
Like a steel drum. And how about this bass drum here?
Bass drum on 1 is a fairly
nice
normal.
dead thud. Nice sound, actually.
With 14, it has a lot of decay and white noise wound into it.
And you work it with a conventional foot pedal?
That's correct, yeah.
Right. How about a hi-hat?
Well, a hi-hat used to be on a stalk, of course, with cymbals on top. This is another version. It's a Simmons hi-hat.
Looks like a sewing machine pedal, to be honest.
Sounds like that when you depress it.
Yeah.
And when wired through this pad here, sounds like the usual thing.
Still a metallic sound, though, like a hi-hat.
Very much so.
And presumably you've got a bank of cymbals that I can't see?
Yes,
or
we have
equivalents?
some metals, yeah.
Yes. Ooh, nice. What first got you interested in electronic drums?
Well, when we were reconvening King Crimson, the group I'm in 1981, the rest of the team were, of course, getting very involved with guitar synthesis. And the drummer looked around, obviously, and not wanting to be left out, naturally knocked on Dave Simmons' door. Yeah. And up comes this kind of equipment, which allows me to have a much broader palette with which to...
I expect it took a bit of getting used to, though, didn't it?
Oh,
After an acoustic
some,
kit,
yes, it does. There are different playing surfaces, very much so.
What does it feel like to play? Because it looks as though you're just hitting a tabletop.
Well, the playing surfaces are kind of hard rubber, which is very comfortable to play. It's very like the kind of practice pad that most drummers spend their working lives at, and it rebounds the stick very quickly, quicker than an acoustic drum set where you have to work somewhat harder to pick the sticks up off it.
Do you still feel in control of the sort of sound that the kit is giving out?
Oh yes, in fact you need to control it a lot. I mean, it's a big beast and it's got a lot of sound involved in it. You must program and select all the drum sounds that you want, store them in here, recall them here. You can take the sound out of the back on just a stereo left and right feed, pass it to the sound mixer or sound engineer, and he gets what you have programmed. It's very much you're in control.
But that's on the actual pre-setting. What about when it actually comes down to playing, the feel? If you want to hit them hard or soft, does that register?
Very much so. They're touch sensitive, as we say, and depending on what you've programmed into the main controller, sound will change depending on how hard you hit.
You hit them.
Exactly.
Right. Now, you've got this wonderful setup. Presumably you now don't have to be limited to just making drum sounds.
No, that's true. I mean, these are drumistic. These are still what we would call close to being drum sounds, but I know Dave and his company are working for the future a lot on all kinds of sound, any sound being used rhythmically.
Well, we'll hear some of those right now. Thanks, Bill.
Pleasure.
Mac.
Thank you, Leslie. Do you know, I've often thought that at some time or other, every normal person would want to play the drums, and they'd all end up programming microcomputers.
Well, that cuts you out, Mac.
Thank you. Well, the company that makes these electronic drums exports to over 40 different countries, in fact 85% of their production, and is one of the few British companies that export high technology to Japan. Dave Simmons, the inventor and of the technology, runs the company. Dave, how did you start?
Well, like Bill, I was slogging around the circuit in various unknown groups. And the group I was playing with, we had a drummer, naturally, and he was pretty bored with hitting dead animal skins. So, being interested in electronics and music, I put together something that he could play and we could make some nice sounds with.
Well, how did they work?
Inside each drum that Bill was hitting is a tiny transducer. I've got one here that's a whiskey bottle, empty.
Very familiar sound.
Yeah, empty one, of course. And he hits the drum, the transducer gives out the signal, the computer says, oh, someone's hit me, I better do something, and it outputs the appropriate sound that's been set up by the user previously.
Well, there's effectively 3 computers here. How much power? There seems to be about 12 channels on that. How much power is there in that in computer terms?
It's a modular system, so it can take 12 channels. We've got 8 here. And the sound storage for each channel can be anywhere between 8 and 32 kilobytes. There's a ROM sitting inside. In that particular unit, there's 1.5 megabytes of ROM. And it's mixed in with analog sounds and filtering and noise to make other drum sounds.
Well, I'm sure you've been asked this question 100 times. The drum devices themselves, why the hexagonal and not round?
I've also been asked about 6 times in rehearsal this, but same story. We couldn't afford a circular saw, so we bought a straight saw instead. But no, seriously, anybody that sees the hexagonal shape on TV knows it's a Simmons kit, and that's, as a company, what we want.
What other sounds can you use?
This little unit here, called a sampling unit, actually samples acoustic sounds and blows the proms so that we can use any sound now for percussion. They're not limited to drum-like sounds anymore. And I've got a few here. I can just tap. And of course, we could sample a sound now if you're game for it.
Oh, I'm game for anything.
Ah, the obligatory dog. Chihuahua.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm getting really creative today. I'm not only an artist, I'm a singer.
Right, I'll press the button and we'll make some music.
Great. What is that doing? That's
this is a computer which hits the drum rather better than Bill does.
Oh, don't hit him, Bill.
And we're putting the dog. And we can change the sounds. And we can stop it.
Well done. How far are we along, Bill? Are we just at the beginning, or are we going to see a lot in the future?
Well, I think we should terminate our relationship right here and now. Obviously, we go as far as Dave's imagination can go. I think electronic drums are about the same position that electric guitar was at in 1949, 1950.
You seem to be playing it very much like an ordinary drum kit. Do you normally do it like that?
Yes, in the studio I was playing as per a normal drum set, but we have here, I hope, a piece of videotape live from Tokyo with the group I'm in. And that shows the drums positioned in another way, vertically, so I can stand and demonstrate more clearly what it is that I'm doing.
Great, thank you, Bill.
Bill Bruford drumming up a storm there. Now, Christmases are coming far too fast for some of us, actually, and if you've been racking your brains out trying to decide what to buy for the computer buff in your life, worry no more. We are here to help. John Coller's been looking at some of the choices. Now, John, what sort of things are in the shops this Christmas? And I'm not, of course, talking about rushing out spending thousands of pounds on computers.
No,
it's the bits, isn't it?
Lots of nice cheap things, good
Okay.
books, software. This is a really nice book, The First Computer Dictionary by Brian Samways. Ideal, nicely illustrated, clear, simple. Ideal for, I would thought, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old.
38-year-olds, thank you. That's my Christmas present. Actually, I'm not kidding. That's going to be very useful.
It's nice.
Yep.
Another good book, I rather like this, online handbook. Loads of information about database you want to dial up if you're a real techie, as Mac would
Lovely.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mac, that's for you.
Yeah. Oh, Mind Prober. Now, actually, this is cheating, really, because this is the book that accompanies a programme on the disc. I don't know if you can see the disc inside there. It's a programme which is a sort of personality test. It'll cause chaos in your family, I'm absolutely warning you. Computer asks you questions about somebody, you answer it, then the computer tells you what this person is like. Now, we fed Mac into this computer. Do you know what it said?
I hate to
on
think.
this programme, rather. It declared him to be efficient, bossy, sophisticated and irresistible. It got it spot on, didn't it, Mac?
the last
Anyway,
bit.
but this, seriously, it's fun only.
Load of rubbish.
Ruin your
I mean, it's
Christmas.
marvellous.
Ruin your
Right.
Christmas.
Excellent book here, Robots. This is in the Usborne style, and it really is a carpenter's guide to how to make a robot.
Nice illustrations.
Beautiful illustrations.
What sort of age group, quickly?
Oh, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, plus dads. And there's software deep down here, listings and so on in the back. That's quite fun.
Okay, and I mean, you get a lot of book for your money in these two, don't you? The complete Commodore 64 and the complete Spectrum.
Right,
A lot of
real
book.
good techie stuff.
Now, how about annual subscription to your favourite technical magazine?
Well,
idea?
that would be really nice. If someone's going to give me a subscription, I'll be very happy to accept a subscription to Byte. Good mag, every month, really nice.
Now, the obvious thing to buy for Christmas presents is software. But it is a bit of a minefield, isn't it? Unless you know which computer you're buying for.
Yes.
Having said that, and you know, what can you recommend?
OK, well, let's have a look at 3 really good selling ones at the moment. There's Elite on the BBC Micro, and I must admit I got vaguely addicted to that. It's really rather nice. There's Knight's Law on the Spectrum, and 3D Chess on the QL, and the graphics on that really are almost unbelievable.
Yes, even from here, actually, you can see
Quite
they're
something.
nice and clear. Very
Lovely.
nice.
And we've got a couple here. This is Chiller for the Commodore 64, which is retailing $199, I gather, one of the cheapest, and Ghostbusters for the Commodore 64. That comes out beautifully. It's the bestseller of the Commodore 64 range and coincides with the launch of the film today. That's really nice. But just look at this one.
Now, what's so special about this one?
Well, this one's for the BBC Micro, and I'm kidding you not. It's published by British Telecom, and it is called The Hacker. And I guess that it must be a self-instructional course for people who... no, it can't be.
Very peculiar logo on it. Well, anyway,
It genuinely is British Telecom.
They deserve what they got, really, didn't they?
So be it.
Well, we've been talking about really the low end of the market,
Yes.
but price-wise, that is. What about if we're going to lash out?
Right, a couple
do I
of more
fancy?
expensive items up here.
Well, I'll tell you what I fancy, actually.
Go on, then.
A Simmons drum kit, but I can't afford it.
Yes.
Since I can't, for about £200, is it?
£200.
I would like the music synthesizer.
Right, listen to this. We've got the output of this Acorn product recorded. It's pretty good, isn't it? That plugs straight into a Beeb Micro and is programmed on the BBC keyboard. £200, quite nice.
Very nice for the music enthusiast, presumably.
Now, tell me about your weakness, because I know you have a particular thing that you...
Well, no, before I was going to ask you, actually, what I could buy you.
What, you can buy me? Oh, well,
yes,
all right.
supposing
if you're
I was
do
very,
that,
very rich, for instance.
No problems. Absolutely no problems.
It's like real Christmas, actually. It's lovely.
Well, I can take this one away with me. I've got one already, but I'll have another one. This is a Penman plotter, and it's not only a plotter, it's a sort of robot device, which we've seen on this programme a number of times before, but it can drive around and draw some really excellently detailed prints in 3 colours.
Is that compatible with all
It's
micros,
compatible with
or?
the Beeb and Apple and IBM. Special offer till Christmas, under 200.
Right.
That is very, very nice.
Under 200.
Just, well,
Right.
you get a penny.
Well, look, I'll tell you what, I can't quite run to that, so I'm going to give you for Christmas something
Yes.
that I already have one of myself.
Yes, I think
It's
I'll
a
take
micro
it.
kit bag. It costs around £16. Seriously, I've carted my BBC around into work and things in it, and it is well designed, it's padded, it's nice and easy to hold.
Yes.
£16.
Pockets the lot.
Pockets the
Thank
lot.
you very much. I'll take that out
Happy
with me if I can get away with it.
Christmas. Well, that's all we've got time for, actually. These will have to wait till next year's Christmas. That's all we've got time for, in fact, this year, because our next programme is on Friday, January the 11th, 1985.
Well, I'm still admiring my creation here.
You're the only one who will.
Well, if anybody would like to employ me as a Christmas card designer, you can write to me at the BBC. Well, thank you very much for watching. Have a good Christmas. Happy New Year. But just before we go, I thought, Leslie, you deserve a little present for all that you've done for us. This is a 3-dimensional, full-colour, super silent microcomputer. And you can also use it as a terminal.
Oh, that's what I've... Very terminal, Mac. Thank you very much indeed.
Welcome to the world.